let's start talking about Trump's impeachment, because this is the only story going on in the American press at the moment. The Democrats are screeching about insurrection, which obviously didn't happen.
January 6th was a disgrace. American citizens attacked their own government. They used terrorism to try to stop a specific piece of domestic business they did not like. Fellow Americans beat and bloodied our own police. They stormed the Senate floor. They tried to hunt down the Speaker of the House. They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the Vice President. They did this because they'd been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth. Because he was angry he'd lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty.
Place your bets now! Come on, quick, bets! Betting ends!
So when they arguing the constitutionality at this
yes,
point,
yeah,
they've not gone to the juicy part of it, which is
the fact that he didn't do what they're accusing him of doing. Yeah.
Yes, the incitement part.
Yeah, he didn't ask people to storm the Capitol. He didn't give them money to storm the Capitol. He didn't tell them when to storm the Capitol, and he didn't launch the execution from afar. So, it's not.
On all of
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole, which the defeated president kept shouting into the largest megaphone on planet Earth.
Come on! Bet! Okay, that's it. Betting end.
He's not only not calling for violence, he's calling for his people to go home and stop being violent. But I mean, he is apparently right, according to Time magazine, about the fact that it was a landslide for Trump, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. From the Time secret history of the cabal, they say Podhorse was warning everyone that he knew polls were underestimating Trump's support. Most analysts had recognized there would be a blue shift in key battlegrounds, but they hadn't comprehended how much better Trump was likely to do on Election Day. It seems that Time magazine can confirm that they knew it was going to be a landslide, which is why the cabal had to falsify the election.
The issue is not only the president's intemperate language on January 6th. It is not just his endorsement of remarks in which an associate urged, quote, trial by combat. It was also the entire manufactured atmosphere of looming catastrophe, the increasingly wild myths about a reverse landslide election that was somehow being stolen, some secret coup by our now president. Now, I defended the president's right to bring any complaints to our legal system. The legal system spoke. The Electoral College spoke. As I stood up and said clearly at that time, the election was settled. It was over. But that just really opened a new chapter of even wilder, and more unfounded claims. The leader of the free world cannot spend weeks thundering that shadowy forces are stealing our country and then feign surprise when people believe him and do reckless things. Now, sadly, many politicians sometimes make overheated comments or use metaphors. We saw that unhinged listeners might take literally, but that was different. That's different from what we saw. This was an intensifying crescendo of conspiracy theories orchestrated by an outgoing president who seemed determined to either overturn the voters' decision or else torch our institutions on the way out.
Okay, so which one, the genuine generous portion, gentlemen?
Place your bets now! Come on, now!
What is it going to be? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
Come on! Quick! Betting ends.
If you actually have to fact check this, as Newsweek did about a week ago, you kind of got to say, well, actually, Trump didn't instigate this. As they say, did Trump say to peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol? So they give the clip of Trump saying, I know that everyone will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. And they say, well, however, Trump's call to display strength shows a possible contradiction in Trump's message to his crowd before the certification vote. Does it? I mean, a call to strength is not necessarily violence. I mean, I guess, like, to put it mildly. In fact, most times in your life when you're expected to show strength, you're not in the middle of a fight. You're doing something that's difficult, and it takes strength of will, strength of character, strength of mind, occasionally strength of body, but that doesn't have to be violence either. It could be, do you have the strength to lift this thing up onto the top shelf or something like that? There are plenty of ways to use strength. And so essentially they had to certify this as being mostly true. Yeah, he did say peacefully and patriotically.
The unconscionable behavior did not end when the violence actually began. Whatever our ex-president claims he thought might happen that day, whatever reaction he says he meant to produce, by that afternoon, we know he was watching the same live television as the rest of us. A mob was assaulting the Capitol in his name. These criminals were carrying his banners, hanging his flags, and screaming their loyalty to him. It was obvious that only President Trump could end this. He was the only one who could. Former aides publicly begged him to do so. Loyal allies frantically called the administration. The president did not act swiftly. He did not do his job. He didn't take steps so federal law could be faithfully executed and order restored. No. Instead, according to public reports, he watched television happily, as the chaos unfolded. He kept pressing his scheme to overturn the election. Now, even after it was clear to any reasonable observer that Vice President Pence was in serious danger, even as the mob, carrying Trump banners, was beating cops and breaching perimeters, the president sent a further tweet attacking his own vice president. Now, predictably and foreseeably, under the circumstances, members of the mob seemed to interpret this as a further inspiration to lawlessness and violence, not surprisingly. Later, even when the president did half-heartedly begin calling for peace, he didn't call right away for the riot to end. He did not tell the mob to depart until even later. And even then, with police officers bleeding and broken glass covering Capitol floors, he kept repeating election lies and praising the criminals.
Gently, gently. Yes. Now. Oh ho! The dishonorable
Trump.
deception.